And welcome to Conservatives Talk.
And we got some pretty hot button topics that we're going to talk about this week.
Just a little bit.
Probably going to get us canceled or sued. But anyway, so the first topic that we're going to get into is if I'm a bird, then you're a bird.
Caca.
That one's going to be fun. Then we're going to kind of dabble in, it's all a part of the show. And if you're a consultant or anything else, then you know exactly, or hell, if you just watched what we watched on Thursday, then you'll get it.
Dun, 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 dun.
Also, Joe Biden finally admitted what we already knew, and that's he's going to keep borders wide open.
Yes.
And I really want to dabble into that in the 40-year plan, which kind of leads to, mine and Buck's favorite segment, the conspiracy corner, where we're going to talk about, you heard of Hot Girl Summer?
I have.
Well, they're saying it's going to be white nationalist summer. So we're going to see what that conspiracy is.
Yeah, that's definitely just canceled.
So stay tuned.
And welcome back to Conservatives Talk. My name's Justin.
And this is Jamie.
And as always, we always like to start each show by saying, please go to conservativestalk.org and hitting the sponsor tab in the top right-hand corner and the bottom left-hand corner and helping us to be able to continue to produce all of these shows and really get our message out far and wide. And anything that you run across on any platform or streaming service that you see our shows, always make sure that you like and share everything, because the more likes and shares that we get, the higher up in the news feed that it comes with.
Yeah.
So always make sure to hit those two buttons. And in addition to that, always make sure that you subscribe to all of our platforms as well. That way you can stay up to date with everything. Go to our website, conservativestalk.org, and give us, put in your email address there at the top, and we can help keep you up to date with the future episodes that we have coming, different things that we're putting out locally and nationally, and really keeping you up to date on everything that's going on.
And I always want to add this, like, everything is returned back to the podcast. Like everything that you see here is all thanks to our sponsors, and we are very appreciative of you all. And thank you for continuing us to have us and keep us going. And thank you, Hugh and Net News Network, for all the support that y'all are giving us as well. And so I'm ready. Like I am.
Let's do this. Well, before we do that, your second favorite.
My favorite part.
Yes.
I forget about that. It is 150 days until the general election, and we beat Stacey Abrams. I can't wait.
Yet again.
Can't wait.
Music to my ears.
I can't wait. Like, you know what? We're going to say that for another day.
Yes. So I'll tell you what, let's go ahead and jump right into something that Stacey Abrams is going to probably crawl up into a ball and start crying in her bed once she hears it, or she's going to be the one to lead the effort to sue us and have us canceled. So we mentioned to begin with that the leading topic into this is
I'm a bird, you're a bird.
If I'm a bird, then you're a bird. So what that is it's essentially the mentality behind the alphabet group. And we're not going to name the group specifically by name, simply because if we do, then it gets us in trouble, and social media content, your moderators will easily flag it and catch it and take us down and cancel us out and us not be able to produce any of these anymore. So we're not going to name them by name or anything along that line. But it's, in all honesty, it's the mentality behind everything that they're doing.
Well, so I will say this, okay? I'm going to quote a Dave Chappelle joke, right?
Uh-oh. You are going to get us canceled.
I'm just in one of those moods today. Everything was fine when it was just the L, the B's, and the G's. The rest of this is getting out of hand, and honestly, like, that's kind of what's got me kind of triggered. I'm using, some of their terminology. I'm triggered by.
There you go, using the alphabet again, man.
I mean, like, I knew about it, but then it kind of like expanded.
Such a bigot.
I did not realize that it expanded like this, and I'm kind of freaked out. So look,
So
pull it up. Pull it up.
Hang on. Before we jump into that, a little bit, and I love it. I love it. Believe me, I love it. Finally. so, so what we're referring to is, if you're not aware, we are based out of Northwest Georgia, specifically in Rome. Rome is going to be hosting, and I'm choking back the vomit as I'm saying this. Rome's going to be hosting the first Rome Pride Day or weekend, I guess you would call it. It's a Rome Pride Fest.
Yeah.
And it's no small and insignificant matter. It's being put on by an organization called PFLAG. And it's a national group and a national organization that helps to promote this sort of lifestyle and these sort of things that go on and push it, well, not just push it, but jam it down everybody's throats.
Here's the thing that I have a problem with, okay? Again, I'm going to say this, right? This is my personal opinion, okay? I could care less if you're bi, homosexual, lesbian, that is you. That has nothing
exactly
to do, like, you know what I mean? Like,
you do
you. I understand pride. I get that to a certain degree. What I really have a issue with is what is going on underneath this that I think is intentional grooming, and it is outright
before
awful.
We get to that, let's take a moment and explain why it is so significant that they are coming to Rome. So Rome is essentially the bastion, or it is the center point of one of the most conservative areas in all the country.
So for all of our national listeners, when we talk about Northwest Georgia and we talk about Georgia as a whole, Georgia has metropolis pockets.
Yes.
So everyone knows about Atlanta and Metro Atlanta, which has its own bandwidth, but then you also have the Macon area, Savannah, and really kind of Thomaston and down in South Georgia. Rome is the Northwest Georgia metropolis area.
Yes.
So to kind of give you an idea, for those who don't know our area, it is, if you're in like the northern part of Georgia, where Georgia, Alabama, and Tennessee meet, it's 2 to 3 hours to get you to your next biggest city. So like you got 2 to 3 hours to get to Huntsville, Chattanooga, Atlanta. Rome is the next largest metropolis that's there. So when people start talking about, I want to go to the mall, I want to go to, like something that has more than 10, 20,000 people, anything of that nature, you come to Rome if you are in that area. So that's why this is kind of significant.
It's the gateway to the North Georgia. It's the gateway in the heart of the Red Wall.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's the reason why this is so significant, because they're doing this in an effort to weaken the Red Wall.
Well, I think it's an effort to weaken the Red Wall. But what I think it is
also a slap in the face to a dear friend of ours.
Completely. I also think that this is taking advantage of the LGBT community in Northwest Georgia, right? We cannot ignore that they don't
absolutely.
Like they exist. A lot of them vote conservative.
Yes.
A lot of them, share the same values that we do. We just, for Christian terms, we sin different, right?
Yes.
So I think that this outside group is coming in and taking advantage of our community because they are saying, hey, and we've seen this multiple times. You'll have these groups come in and they'll say, hey, we'll pay for this. We'll get this done. We'll put this on for you. And then boom, there's an underlining issue.
Yes.
That, is going on and people don't see it.
Now let's jump right into that issue, and we're going to bring it up on the screen with us right here. That's the underlying issue.
That, dude.
So they are going to be hosting, or this organization is going to be hosting, a drag queen story time.
And in, they have a lot of festive things going on throughout the weekend.
Mm-hmm.
And kind of buried in all the activities that they're going to be doing over the 2 days. It's Kid Zone.
Yes, actually,
It literally
every
says
single
Kid
one of
Zone.
these. Well, every single one of these are described as being family friendly. Bring your kids, family friendly. Bring your kids. Although we've seen quite explicitly that a lot of these things happening going on, kids have no business whatsoever being anywhere near it or around it.
And yeah, I mean, like kid, look.
I mean, that image in of itself should scare the
not,
you know what out of
Not to get too personal, right?
I'm gonna have PTSD from this.
I have a problem. Like I will forever protect children because, like, my innocence was taken when I was a child, and so I like this triggers me because what I am seeing is the same but different scenario. And that in itself is a problem for me.
Oh yeah,
because you are taking something that a community is going to do to feel free for themselves, right? That would be no different than and this is just me personally speaking. I know, like, Justin's not going to relate to anything that I'm about to say next. Like this to me is the same thing as someone coming in and taking over like February for Black History Month. You know what I mean? Like that is something like it to me. Like when people are coming in and they're doing the Pride March as a local thing, that's like when we do the MLK March. But then underline, like you got some weird shit going on, and they're gonna have a kid zone, and they're gonna have, you know what I mean, like a drag queen sitting there reading to children,
drag queen stories. So it's and it's not just that this is the only event that they're going on that's going to be affecting kids. Every single event that they have is going to be geared towards bringing children into this. And that kind of jumps into a little bit of what we were, or the whole idea behind the title of the segment being, If I'm a Bird, You're a Bird. Because essentially what they're trying to instill in children is if I'm trans, then you're possibly trans, or you're trans. It used to be the idea of tolerance. We all just got along. We all tolerated each individual's ideas, beliefs, lifestyles, and things along that nature. Then it went to the next level of acceptance. Acceptance being, okay, I understand and I am living with the fact that you're doing this, but now I am required to say, okay, it's okay for you to do this.
Well, so here's the thing for me too. Like, let kids be kids.
Yes. Well, that's
you know I mean?
that's actually something. That's the next thing.
Let kids be kids, because kids are weird anyway. Kids are quirky, they're weird, they're figuring out their own thing. Like, you don't have to push an agenda or project something onto them. If they choose to do that or be that when they're an adult, that's them. That's their own decision. They will make those choices really between the ages of like 15 on. But like
and I'll even go even further to say that you were absolutely correct with that. But nowadays, it's moved to the next level. It's gone away from tolerance. It's even gone away from acceptance. It's gone to the area of celebration. The fact that you have to now celebrate the lifestyle choices that I choose to live. They are demanding that you celebrate their lifestyle choices. And again, we're not referring to the first couple letters of the alphabet on this one. We're referring to the last ones.
The car ride.
Yes, it will.
Well, that's part of that Dave Chappelle joke.
Yes.
They messed up the car ride.
But they will tell you that if you do not celebrate what they are living or how they're living and their lifestyle choices that they choose, that you are no longer able to participate in open and general society, because you're no longer celebrating every lifestyle choice out there, everything under the circuit, everything under the sun.
You just made me hit a rabbit hole, right? Because that's my biggest issue with so one thing that I've been battling with is you're starting to see this whole ESG movement that's going from, it was, I swear.
Now explain what ESG is.
All right. So ESG is something that is starting to come out as basically like a social credit rating for in America and Europe. It is for companies, but in China, it is what they call social credit. And I have to be very clear that these are the same thing. All right. Because so to explain first what China's doing, China has, if you've ever been to DC and you see.
I'm sorry, I can't look there anymore.
Yeah. Thank you. If you ever been to DC and you see cameras every 10 feet, right, and you record at all times and everything else, right, China took that to a whole new level. Because in America, we're like, I'm on camera everywhere. But in China, they put you on camera and like they give you basically a credit score based upon how good of a governmental citizen you are to the communist China.
So again, like what we were talking about the last show, political correctness.
Correct. On a communist level.
Yes.
Now, talk about infiltrating, right? They knew that in America, they could not implement that the same way. Right? But what you can do is try to take it and put that towards private industry. Because I don't like, let me
private industries are essentially doing it now.
Well, because here's the thing, right? And
you have Delta, you have Coke, you have.
Well, hold on. I want to explain it this way, okay? Big business is mainstream.
Yes.
All right. But never forget that big business does not care.
It's all about profit.
It's all about profit. And so, every time someone, here's my favorite thing. Every time someone sits here and talks about, oh, look at how industry is changing, right? Realize that less than 0.01% of these industries that are changing still have Black CEOs, male or female. There are only 4 currently African-American CEOs of Fortune 500 companies. Out of all of these large industries, there's only 15% of them are female. So over the last 100 years, and really over the last 20 years, where this social wokeness has come in and these big companies have pushed it, they ain't done it themselves. Or what they'll do is they'll create a special board seat to where they will add that person and then they will be their diversity person.
A little affirmative action position.
Literally. Right? So it is literally not like they're not changing. You see what I'm saying?
I got
they're placating.
Yes. I got you.
And I had this conversation with someone about because they were arguing for ESGs. I don't even want to get into why they were doing it. Because anything that you do in an ESG, all that's public record anyway. I don't need an outside for-profit whatever organization telling me, giving me a score on a company about their social justice or environmental impact or how they handle their governance, right? Because all of that is public record if they're a publicly traded company. What's really starting to happen is that now these things are pushing into PE and private equity. So now you're trying to tell the mom and pop store or try to cancel the mom and pop store based on their ESG score.
No, it's a way that big business is working to overtake everything anyway.
Correct.
So
I know I got off topic. We'll come back out of the rabbit hole.
Yeah. So the issue behind all this, and one of the reasons why, or at least in my opinion on this, one of the reasons why this is coming out so heavily, especially involving pushing the children, getting kids involved with everything, is that they're trying to essentially confuse kids more than what they are growing up, or at least to indoctrinate them and to start pushing an agenda and to really confusing them about who they are, what they have the potential to be, and what they have the potential to come out to be.
So, here's my whole thing with that too. You're directing.
Yes.
All right. Because kids are going to do weird things anyway. You know what I mean? They're kids. And that's what I mean by when I say let kids be kids, because if a 5-year-old boy comes in here and dress, you're going to laugh.
Yeah, I am. And tell him to get out.
Or
at least just tell him his parents to take him out and change him.
You know what I mean? Your initial is going to be, you're going to laugh and you're like, what are you doing, boy? You know what I mean? And then you're going to have a conversation. The parents or whoever is going to have a conversation.
May call defects.
Well, what I'm that, but see, here's the thing. That's the point we've gotten to because of how it's been directed. 30 years ago, it was just a laughable matter because it was you know what I mean? This is it. You knew growing up who, kind of who was going to be what, like, you know what I'm saying? Because that's just who that person was, right? But now you're starting to see like pointed subliminal triggering to direct certain outcomes.
So that actually rolls into kind of the next thing that or kind of the next bullet point in the conversation is that kids inherently are naturally drawn to craving attention.
Yeah.
And we see a national attention surge into this area. Our kids that are coming out as transgender and they're not the sex that they were born, they feel like they're a different gender and everything along that line. Well, it's because they see it everywhere they go.
Mainstream media pushes
exactly. They see, and then you have parents that want the adoration of being brave because they're allowing their children to be who they feel like they be.
That goes back.
So I mean, a 3-year-old is not going to know whether they're male or female.
Yeah, 10-year-old isn't either. You know what I mean? But see, that goes back to we've reached a new age of keeping up with the Joneses.
Yes,
you know what I mean.
That's a good point. That's a good point on that.
Like when God, we're old now. When we were kids, you know what I mean, keeping up with the Joneses.
You might be old.
Keeping up with the Joneses was, you know what I mean, you got a nice house, boat, couple cars, big SUV. You know what I mean? Got a Jag in the garage. Like keeping up with the Joneses
best pair of shoes as kids.
Yeah, is like, you know what I mean? How many?
The best book pack.
Yeah, you know, it's totally different now, and you see people who like have the. I'm trying to figure out the best way to describe it, but you like they go overboard with their like wokeness or Democrat belief system. Like no one cares. It's like, you know what I mean? Like,
well, the mainstream media cares. The progressive left cares. All of these people that are trying to orchestrate this entire agenda care.
Well, so here's my
the everyday American does not care.
Exactly. Here's my whole opinion, right? Our viewers watch our show because they believe the same thing that we do, right?
Well, some of them watch it to yell and scream and then come back and comment and say that we're idiots and bigots and hateful and all this other stuff.
Well, I mean,
but
2% haters.
Please continue.
You just keep pushing us up.
Exactly. Love all those comments.
But the same thing goes for the other side, right? Like the people who that's their solidarity, you know, that's their comfort zone and what they want to be and who they are as a single person. Like that is what they view, right? When you look at the bell-shaped curve example, 68% of the whole country don't care about either.
They're more concerned about whether or not Johnny Depp's going to win his case or not.
Exactly. They're you know what I mean? They're trying to figure out how Amber Heard's going to pay Johnny Depp his $15 million when she only has 4. At least that's what TMZ reported.
Well, I mean, you know, I did read that there was somebody that came up with the idea that she should start an OnlyFans account.
Yeah, but that's after they banned her GoFundMe. Thank you, GoFundMe, and Go Johnny Depp.
Man.
Like, you know what I mean?
You would. All right, so let's get into the next topic on this. So the next topic we were talking about is it's all a show, or essentially it's part of the show.
I forgot. I was going to look up what episode of House of Cards that was. Okay, so so here's the thing. Okay, I want everyone, please, if you don't have a Netflix account, go find your friend with a Netflix account.
Can't do that now.
No. I mean, go to their house because Netflix won't let you share passwords anymore. Because the
crackdown because they're losing a lot of money because nobody wants to get it.
Well, here's the other thing. Rabbit hole, real quick. Come right back up, real fast. Remember Blockbuster, right? You go get a movie, put it in VCR. Then you have Redbox. Now most of the Redboxes are locked because no one has a DVD player anymore. All right. Now we're starting to see the transition out of that because then you had Netflix, but then everybody else came out with a streaming service. And like, I mean, if Netflix doesn't start producing less woke, more like actual good shows again,
yeah,
you know, then everybody else is
going to hold my breath on that one.
Gonna go to something else. Like I'm forever keep my Netflix account. Anyway, season 5, House of Cards. The similarities between the J6 committee and the show that they put on Primetime TV And
it was a circus.
And the episode that Frank Underwood was on is shocking.
Yeah, I'd agree with you on that one. It's not just it was not just a show or political theatrics or anything on that line. I would honestly be surprised that, well, I say honestly, the FEC needs to open up an investigation into Pelosi for campaign finance violations, because she essentially did in-kind contributions to every single one of those Democrat members, as well as those Republican members, specifically Liz Cheney.
I want to know when this I want to know when this committee is going to end. You know what I mean? Because here's why.
Well, it ends at the end of the Primetime.
So they say
miniseries that they're putting on.
They say a month, right?
Mm-hmm.
But here's the thing about it, guys. Here's the thing about it. I know Miss Cheney, and I think it's a couple other people who are on that committee who got primaries around the time of July and August.
I believe it's August 16th.
Yep. So be mindful, and I want y'all to go explore, right? Go dig and see how, because they haven't released the last date. They just keep saying, next Monday we'll do this, next Thursday we'll do this, and then we'll have another hearing in a couple weeks. And what I mean?
It's a mini series, is what it is.
If you keep count, by the time we get to next week, that puts us into the middle of June.
Mm-hmm.
If you go a week after that, that puts us in the beginning of July. If you even take one more week, you're that much closer to August, right before some of these primaries happen.
Yeah. I mean, in all honesty, it is simply a Democrat. It's a Democrat effort for a campaign or campaign ads. Well, is essentially all this is.
Because, let me say this too.
Although I will say, even Democrat members of Congress are coming out and saying, "All right, let's stop this. Voters don't care about this."
Well, finally they changed it, right? Because they were going to try to do every hearing on primetime one night. And then finally the rest of Congress realized this is a lost cause. And the next one's going to be at the time that they have every other hearing committee at 9, 10 o'clock in the morning.
Well, the thing about it is they're not able to help every Democrat out there by getting them on this committee that's in these contested primaries. So they are essentially only helping the few that are with that one, and they are getting away from all the issues that are actually out there that Americans actually care about and that are actually concerned with. And a lot of those, just last month, we hit 8.6% inflation.
This is probably going to get us sued, but you know what? I'm sorry. And I feel really bad for Mrs. Officer who was.
Well, we'll get to that one in a little bit. That one comes in a little bit. That one comes in a little bit. But
Justin's going to have to keep me on the rails today because I'm
really
irritated.
8.6 record high inflation, a 40-year high inflation.
Highest gas prices ever.
Yes, exactly. We are seeing record low national approval ratings of the administration. That's essentially pushing a lot of this agenda.
Well, see, I was going to mention that too, because I don't have the actual statistics. I didn't look at it before.
It's 33%.
Well, no, what I mean by that is this, right? I don't remember, and someone correct me if I'm wrong, I do not remember within 2 years, less than 2 years, when a president in their first term had such a low approval rate.
Mm-hmm. No, this
is a record.
It's
not in a good way. It's embarrassing, which is why they pull antics like this. So
it's all a distraction. It's Houdini. It's smoke and mirrors.
And here's the thing: both sides do this, right? And this is what I mean by that. Both sides have consultants. Mm-hmm. Your consultants are the ones who kind of put the veil up, and we'll call it that. And so, as individuals who've seen this, that other people may not realize, when these things start happening, you're like, some consultants foaming at the mouth right now because they're like, oh, I can do this and I can do that, with no regard to the American people and what's actually going on. Mm-hmm. This is a charade for people who think emotionally first or who do not know the process.
Yes. So again, it's a smokescreen for everything that's going on. It's a distraction. They're getting away from high inflation rates. They're getting away from record high gas prices. They're getting away from record low approval ratings. They're getting away from the record high violent crime rate. They're getting away from the record high illegal immigrants crossing the border. They're getting away from the record high drug overdose deaths. They're getting away from the failed Afghanistan pullout. They're getting away from the baby food formula shortages. And they're getting away from the fact
America.
Exactly. And they're also getting away from the fact that there was an attempt on a member of the United States Supreme Court.
Someone tried to kill Kavanaugh.
Exactly. They're trying to change the narrative away from all of that. And by doing this on prime time, they're trying to take this and focus the narrative back onto this because this polled high 2 years ago.
Yep.
Nowadays, nobody cares about this anymore. Everybody's cares about what is going on to them and affecting them personally.
So I will say this. The people I know you said we were going to get to this later, and I got my script, but it's
we'll get to it. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. We'll get to it. So, in an effort to do all of this, they actually hired a production manager.
Yep.
So they openly and are aware of this and openly admit this, that this is nothing more than a show, a theatrical performance. They hired a media production manager who did a lot of, I believe it was ABC shows and networks.
Yep.
Hired him to come in and produce this to be able to emphasize the important things that they can get out and create a narrative that really affected them and really punctuated what they are wanting to get outside of what the actual truth is. Now we'll get into where that was. And part of that was they had a witness.
I'm so upset. Before I get to the witness, what really upset me the most, okay, is we'll have to explain this too. Okay. Mm-hmm. There is a difference and there's a reason why this is a hearing and not, give me the right one, like a case, right?
No, it's technically not even really, well, I guess you could say yes, it is a hearing, but it does not carry any teeth to it to be able to do anything with it. Congress doesn't have the prosecutorial authority and power to be able to do anything.
There we go. I need his legal mind to explain like what I'm trying to say for a second, because the reality is there is this matters nothing.
Mm-hmm.
This is like nothing can come of this hearing other than persuasion.
So they can make recommendations to the Department of Justice
to try to investigate.
Yes, but that also comes into another point that we're going to bring up here in a minute. I mean, part of this, as we were saying earlier, this being so theatrical, they actually even had scripts that they were reading from.
Yep.
None of what they were saying on Thursday was impromptu. None of it was heartfelt. None of it was anything other than produced and manufactured well ahead of time, tested, reread, rewritten, and then made to carry what they felt would carry the largest impact otherwise.
Two things to always look at whenever you're watching something like this.
Follow the eyes.
A lot of times when they zoom in on someone and you can see their eyes, like even on our show, you'll see me look down like that,
or see them look up at the screen.
Yeah, or look up at the screen. I am looking for something. Okay. The chairman of the committee, Thompson,
Beanie.
Beanie Thompson. You could see his eyes continuously shift, not down, like he was like when he shifted down, you could tell he was reading from a paper. When he shifted left, it was something else he was reading from.
Well, there was a TV monitor in front of the witness, well, not in front of them, but next to the witnesses and in front of the media. There's a large TV monitor set up in all of those rooms.
I didn't see that.
Oh yeah. So that's where essentially where it was coming from. It's almost kind of the teleprompters that you see in the presidential addresses. You can see them off to the side right here. Those are teleprompters that are reflecting written words that they are reading. They're not making these speeches that way. They're reading these things.
To explain to our audience too, most people don't realize this either. Most teleprompters now aren't like they used to be, right? Mm-hmm. When most people, when they think of teleprompters, they think of Anchorman, where they got the big like camera looking thing that's like in green letters or something of that nature.
Well, that's what they did last on Thursday.
But what a lot of teleprompters are now, it looks like a mic stand with a glass image there.
Yes.
And so when you're seeing this, it may look like a mic stand or a light fixture or something of that nature, and it's in blue letters, so the people behind it can't see through it.
That's why you see people shifting their heads side to side.
Because they got two teleprompters.
It makes it look like they're looking at the audience either way, but they're actually reading teleprompters.
Yep.
A little inside trick into that one.
Yep.
So, yeah, and in addition to all of what we saw, all the theatrics last night, there was not a single piece of quote unquote evidence that was shown or that they said that that was admitted that was not edited.
Yeah. So like when you go to court, if there's evidence, there's a whole, you got to show the whole thing.
Well, again, you're jumping ahead. You're jumping ahead.
So the whole thing.
You're jumping ahead. So they would take literally. Yeah. Well, so when these videos that we saw last night, those 5, 10, 15-second clips were from literal hours and hours of footage. The depositions that we saw that were taking were from literal hours and hours of depositions that were taken. The text messages that we saw, there were thousands of text messages that were submitted, yet they chose 3.
So what they're doing
2,
is
4.
What they're doing is they're taking away the context.
Yes.
So, and everyone does this, has seen this, like, and they literally have like Facebook games about it, to where you can take your last text message and put it in the game or whatever, and it changes the meaning of the image below. So they use that same psychological tactic yesterday to try to persuade all the viewers into believing one thing versus another. Because here's the other thing. Not one thing that was done in that hearing had anything to do with President Trump other than he gave his speech.
Yeah, exactly.
But every single time, every single piece of evidence, they try to link back to President Trump.
Creating a narrative.
Correct.
And it was actually Nancy Pelosi that came out and specifically said that the reason why they were doing this the way that they were doing this was to create the narrative that they saw would be the best fit for the outcome that they wanted and they were hoping for.
A monster.
I mean, those were. I mean, that's paraphrasing a little bit. Well, that's literally what she was saying.
Because that's what she does, right? Friend of mine, was a congressman down in Florida, and one of the most kind-hearted guys ever. And I mean, he was literally running on fishing rights. Trying to increase fishing rights and better licensing for fishermen out near the Panhandle. And Nancy Pelosi saw him as weak, so she just round up $15 million and dumped it his opponent's campaign. And like, I'm not gonna say his name, but like, I felt bad for him because like I even went down there to help, because they're like taking the same tactic. They were taking images, putting them in black and white, taking snippets of a whole conversation where someone was yelling at him, so he's like pointing his finger back, and they're saying things like, he doesn't really believe in your fishing rights. When is the furthest thing for the truth?
Yeah, I mean,
it's a tactic.
The entire thing last night was a mischaracterization of the truth.
Yep.
It was all created from thousands of hours, and they openly admitted that a lot of this stuff was coming from hundreds of thousands of documents that they had subpoenaed, that they had gathered. But I think in total we saw maybe 2. On the generous side, we saw 5 minutes of actual footage and documentation and testimony. The rest was nothing more than conjecture and what they believed that was coming out of it.
I think
5
Thompson
minutes
and
of
Cheney talked for 40 minutes out of the 2 hours.
Oh yes.
Oh
yeah.
So then when you break that down, like take the time slot, right? So you're telling me out of
2 hours.
Well, like here's the thing. Even if you just take the whole time of the hearing, right? 1,000 hours, right? The average phone call is like 2 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean? So like 1,000 hours of testimony, you had to snip together 2 hours, not even 2 hours.
Total
total
10 minutes generously.
An hour and 30 minutes of nonsense.
Mm-hmm.
Because another thing I want to talk about is this Proud Boy problem.
Again,
because like that in itself is, and I'm calling it a problem because now what they have done is they have taken they've taken a militia, a group of people who have band together, and demonized them for their own political gain.
No, yeah.
And once again, like, here's the thing. I don't know what anybody else thinks, but I didn't know that Afro-Cuban Americans can be white nationalists. I didn't think that was.
It's like we said. It's like we said when this was going on. When he filled out the census, he hit Caucasian other.
Yeah, like the nonsense.
So he was white other.
But they want to categorize everybody.
Yeah, exactly. So, as I mentioned earlier, one of the significant things that they brought in 2 witnesses, or they claimed to be witnesses. One of them was a documentarian for a filmmaker. Nothing really significant or anything came with that one.
That was
that was a time filler. Because the more significant. Well, we'll go ahead.
Well, so I have a problem with this, and I'm breaking like how I usually do the show for this, because you brought in a filmmaker who somehow his role was to follow around the leader of the Proud Boys.
Well, they invited him to.
They invited him to, right? But that was his deal. And through this, he comes up with the idea that they were moving tactically towards.
Well, I don't think it was him that came up with that. I think it was more the committee talking about stack 1 and stack 2 and all this other crap.
They started talking about tactically, but you know what I mean? He presented the image, and that to me, his film is what brought it. They put militarized terms to it, and then when you combine the two, that triggers something in him to where he wants to testify, because something that he thought he was just filming now turned into something, because you're looking at it differently.
Well, he did not come there voluntarily. He was subpoenaed. And he did openly say that when he came there and they asked why you were here, he said, because I was subpoenaed. However, the second witness that they had there that day.
Poor girl.
Yeah, poor girl. Right. The CIA operative in training.
No, I think she's going to take the Comey route.
How you figure?
You're like, what do you mean by that? So, I'm gonna throw another little fun bone out there. I was in Texas, and I was hanging out, and so I popped up on the show on Showtimes, which I found very interesting. Showtimes has a small series that talks about the disputes between former presidents and their FBI directors. In that, they presented both sides of Comey, which I did not realize. I guess it was because I was young, didn't know about it at the time, hadn't really started studying politics. But it started talking about how James Comey became the FBI director. For starters, he worked as, and I can't remember this part, he worked in a high-ranking service to where he was in there with George W. Bush. Okay. It was not the FBI. I kind of want to say it was a Secret Service, but I don't know. Go watch the show. Comey, then after Bush was no longer president, all of a sudden says, I just felt that some things in that administration were wrong, and I'm going to go before. And all this was leading into 9/11, how the Patriot Act and the NSA were formed and all this other kind of stuff.
Okay.
He said that I just feel that some things that were done were wrong, and I want to go to Congress and testify about it. So Comey goes and testifies, and all this documented. You can go back and look at it. You can go back and watch the video of him testifying before Congress, bashing George W. Bush, a Republican president that he worked for. This now leads to Obama naming him as the next FBI director.
Okay, so you think that she's going to come in and try and become or go through the ranks for FBI?
Yep. Because then I have to add this last part. Okay, Comey tried the same tactic because when he tried to do the Hillary issue, because one thing a lot of people don't realize either was there is photo and video evidence of Bill Clinton talking to the head of the DOJ during the Obama administration. At the same time, during the Trump administration.
You're talking about the airplane
yes.
conversation. Oh, yeah.
Yes, because you see Bill talking to the head of the DOJ at the same time that Comey is supposed to be looking into Hillary's issues. Why this is significant is because all the FBI really does is they go out and they investigate, right? Like if any charges are actually going to be brought, it's brought by the Department of Justice. So this is where you see two parties communicating that.
I got you. I see what you're saying.
I'll get back on that.
I say CIA simply because of her educational pursuits. She came out and she's a UGA grad, but now so when she graduated from Georgia, she went back, she went to DC and she became a Capitol Police officer. Now she's working on her master's degree at Johns Hopkins University for intelligence analysis, which is CIA written all over it.
Yeah.
And we all know that,
or at least has that too.
We believe a little bit, or at least I believe a little bit of the fact that the FBI and the CIA were both involved with the January 6th plot, because you had a lot of folks there, a lot of actors that were working on direction, and a lot of the tactics a lot of things that were done, especially in the instigation part, are things that the CIA are trained to do in order to bring down governmental regimes. 100%, that's exactly what they're trained to do. So that's where my area, or that's where my my thought process goes on that.
Yeah, but that's more your.
Either way, her testimony was heavily embellished, and there were significant facts and figures there that she said and that she testified to that were heavily embellished or greatly emphasized or overly emphasized.
I'm not a small man, okay? I'm not a small man. I'm about 230.
Just how big a boy are you?
You know what I mean? Like, I'm about 230. If
you don't know what I'm talking about, do you?
I do.
Okay.
I'm ignoring it. At 230, a stocky 30-year-old, I will not be able to hold off with a barricade 8 people, let alone 100. Okay. In what mind frame did we assume that a woman that was probably 150 at max could do this?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because support was held off. You already, like, at a certain level, there needs, like, there is protocol where there's a number of people where it's like, okay, this is too much, we need to bring in more people, because now you're significantly outnumbered. It's not a 2-to-1, 4-to-1, anything.
Her physical attributes, yes, absolutely, that would show that, or characterize that was not the place that she needed to be in and doing what she needed to do.
Kudos for doing your job and standing there tough, you know what I mean? But like that's like,
I'm not gonna say anything
you
on
get
that
ran over. Like, that's realistic.
So one of the things she said in her opening statements were that she felt like she defended democracy the same way that her grandfather did. She said that her grandfather had been shot several times and had been blown up and had shrapnel all in his legs. So she's talking about being physically wounded in a combat scenario where people are being blown apart and being shot and essentially just being mutilated.
Yeah, that's just
to what was going on at that time. That scenario is that to me is just so egregious that it's not even funny.
Like, you got knocked out. Like,
and she used the term carnage. Yeah. Now, I looked up what that word meant. The dictionary definition of the word carnage is where multiple people are killed. There's no the only person that was killed that day was Ashley Babbitt. So carnage was, again, a heavily embellished term. Her testimony was heavily embellished. She testified that when she did get knocked down, she slipped because of her fellow officer's blood that was all over the ground at that point in time. Where are the photos of that? Where are the photos of the blood stains?
That wasn't video I saw.
No, there was no video.
The video that they showed in the hearing was
multiple people.
I mean, she got ran over by like 40 people, you know, because
she said she slipped and fell in the blood.
She was holding the bike rack, and these aren't even barricades; they're bike racks. They're holding,
and those things are not light at all.
No.
So she was not just holding that on her own.
She's holding the bike rack.
She was holding it as everybody else was pushing against it, essentially.
So there's this push-pull, and again, you know what I mean? As a grown man, I could not hold off what was going on.
Yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? It was no different than like hitting a football tackle. Like,
absolutely. So
the testimony does not match the actions of the video.
Exactly. Yeah. So she essentially got up there and committed perjury before Congress. That's what, at least in my opinion, that's what it boils down to. So what happened on Thursday was nothing more than a magic show. It was nothing more than sleight of hand. It's nothing more than smoke and mirrors. It was a means of distraction. It was a means of Karl Marx's idea of opium of the masses, to simplify and pacify the people, to get their minds off of the actual problems that they're facing every day. The other significant note that you brought up a moment ago, talking about these pieces of evidence and whether or not anything's actually going to move forward with it, I am predicting right now that nothing is going to actually come of this, simply because of the fact that under the federal rules of evidence, specifically Rule 106, the rule of completion, every piece of evidence or every little sliver there would have to be submitted in its entirety and could therefore be subject to exposure throughout the entire country.
Which is why you have to set context.
Exactly.
Because, you know, blurbs mean nothing.
Especially in the court of law.
The court wants to know full context of what was going on, because you have to be able to tell the whole story.
Exactly.
If you know, I can't even think of an example right now that's outside of this situation, but the reality is, like, if you go through a whole thread of text messages between two people and one of them seems like it could be off, you don't know what was before or after that led to that statement.
Exactly.
And that is where the issue falls with what was done, and why a lot of Republicans had a problem with, you know, this whole committee hearing, on top of just the theatricals that were on top of it, is because you're now directing, like, you know what I mean? Like that you're doing nothing more than directing a production, and you are trying to create a narrative that does not exist, because the narrative that you want to exist is not the reality of what happened.
Absolutely. You're completely right about that. So let's move on to the next topic that we're wanting to talk about. So Biden admits that the borders are open and for the foreseeable future will remain open. And that comes specifically with a directive that's being announced, and it's under the It's the Los Angeles Declaration, and that has been made in conjunction with several other countries that make up the Western Hemisphere of the world. You're talking about Mexico, you're talking about Colombia, you're talking about Ecuador, you're talking about all of these other Latin American countries.
You're also talking about Canada.
Yes. But specifically the Latin American countries. That's where all of this is. That's where all of this is being focused and directed towards. All of the attributes that is going to be coming out of this are focused in Latin America. He says specifically, this declaration, and I'm quoting verbatim here, says this declaration represents a mutual commitment to invest in regional solutions that enhance stability, increase opportunities for safe and orderly migration through the region, and crack down on criminal and human trafficking who prey on desperate people. He further went on to describe this declaration as groundbreaking, integrated new approach to managing migration and sharing responsibility across the hemisphere.
So I'll put it this way. If I were to want to, in this day and age, right? Because 100 years ago, 200 years ago, the way that we expanded is what Putin's doing right now. You invade, you go to war.
And we got Texas.
In the modern day, we use policy to do our invading. Okay. If you were to truly go towards globalization, right? The first step that you would do is you would quadrant, then half, then whole. I say that specifically for this reason. When NAFTA was implemented, you have to look at how the United States works and how Europe and the EU works, and then use that same kind of tactics.
Well, that's what they're trying to set up here is a Western Hemisphere EU.
Correct. Because here's basically how the European Union and the United States ended up operating, right? When we built the Constitution and started sharing things at the federal level, we created interstate commerce, and that came with interstate credentials. So all of that was automatically embedded inside of our country. In Europe, you still had to go basically from what would be Georgia to Alabama or to Florida with a passport, because
used to
until they created the European Union and their version of a constitution, right? They did the American way backwards in Europe because they were already established countries who then formed a union. So the next step in any process like that, well, first step would be industry, right? Because industry capital allows you to flow as any way that you want to, right? The next step would be migration. And then the last step would be credentials, because recognizing education would be the biggest issue. So not all, but a good portion of credentials is recognized between the United States and Canada, but not Central America or Latin America. So so you use migration there, since we've already distorted industry between all three areas.
Yes, and your effort or your idea on the credentialing is significant there as well, because in this declaration, essentially what this sets up, and this is coming from the White House, it says that the U.S. will offer 22,500 H-2B non-agricultural visas to Central America and Haiti. So essentially, we're bringing in 22,500 workers to come in that aren't your seasonal agricultural workers that come in, work for a season, and leave. These are work visas.
Yeah,
you can come here and stay, work,
the permanent work visas.
Yes. Then they also, and these are all things that are coming out of American taxpayer pockets. This is not anything that any other country is committing to, other than taking advantage of these issues,
because they don't want to sit down with us and do an actual immigration policy.
Well, they didn't even send their leaders didn't even come. They sent representatives of their leaders.
What I mean by that is we've been talking about this for years about, both parties really want to look at doing immigration reform to where it makes sense.
Well, before we jump into that, let's finish up with this. So the White House is also committed to resettling 20,000 refugees from the Americas in fiscal year 2023 and 2024. That's threefold or three times what we are doing in 2022. So they're going to essentially allow or invite in 3 times as many people as what they had done this year. Although that's not going to account for the almost 500,000 that have already crossed into our country as well. They're going to increase reunification programs for Cubans and Haitians. They are going to provide an additional $25 million for a crisis response program on migration, and commit to a $314 million in funding via the State Department and U.S. Agency for International Development for humanitarian development assistance for refugees and vulnerable migrants across the hemisphere. So we're not only just going to be paying for the people that are coming here, but we're going to be paying for other people throughout Central and Southern America.
Because they want to make the United States of North America.
Well, they're wanting to make the Western Hemisphere the UA, the United America.
Yeah.
They're going to work on increasing resettlements of Haitian immigrants, and they're going to roll out a new fair recruitment policies or fair recruitment practice guidance for temporary migrant workers. So they're going to essentially institute a recruitment program or fair practice recruitment program for the illegal aliens that are coming into our country. So companies here can't just go out and pander to them to get them to come and work for them for lower wages. They're going to have to give them decent wages, and they're going to have to abide by these standards. So they're going to tell companies, private companies, that they have to abide by these standards in regard to hiring illegal aliens.
Well, so here, there's two things that are very important with this. I think it's very important, everything that Justin read, please go back and really look into this bill, because the two major things I want to highlight: permanent visas give you an identification number similar to your Social Security number. All right. The other major part about this is when you start talking about fair recruiting practices, this is how they get around E-Verify. Because now, if you do any kind of federal, state, local contracting that has any kind of federal money in it, you have to show your E-Verify as well as other,
I can see that completely.
So that's how they get away from it.
So let's pull them out. Let's get into our favorite little topic here. So
Bucks show.
Yeah. So we have dubbed this the conspiracy corner. And rightly so. We are donning our protective headgear. But Buck lives in his, so he's always on board with his. So essentially, we're talking about essentially the white nationalist summer.
Dude, this one upsets me because and here's what. First off, this has always been stupid to me. For like they want to make this because some dude said it on YouTube or something like that. That this stands for the symbol for white power. And
I can't do that.
Like, what? But you know what I mean? Like, okay, so if you've lived in the country, you know the OK game or Made You Look, and
that wasn't below the waist,
so it doesn't count.
Exactly.
So but like that's what that means. Like. And we had it by a different name that's not politically correct as when we were all kids, which is why it became the Made You Look game.
Yeah.
And, people who, I guess you could say, if you weren't a country boy, regardless of your race, then you didn't understand. And no one really wanted to say what it really was because we didn't want to offend anybody. And then all of a sudden, it's the symbol of racism. It's so stupid.
So what this stems from is from a CNN and an AJC article. Essentially what they were talking about was the Department of Homeland Defense came out, the Department of Homeland Security, the DHS, came out with a warning that says that, so the first one they released in regard to the idea that there would potentially be a lot of riots and a lot of violence that came out regarding the Supreme Court ruling in Roe, or that would overturn Roe. They realized that by doing this, that they were essentially pigeonholing their folks. That they were pigeonholing the leftists. They were pigeonholing Antifa. They were pigeonholing all of these other groups, these pro-left radical organizations that we saw for an entire summer in 2020 burn down cities, take over parts of America, and declare them free nations. They saw that and they realized that, hey, these are going to be the same people that are going to come out and declare all these rioting. So they had to come out and create or come out with another
false narrative.
Well, not just that, but they had to almost kind of issue a retraction in a sense, or at least a rebranding of what would be going on. So they have said previously that white supremacy is the nation's, and domestic terrorism is the nation's largest concern. at the moment as far as security goes. But what they failed to mention was that the domestic terrorism that would be taking place was from left-leaning organizations and groups.
Like when
exclusively
when the leak happened,
and
then they started storming, liberals started storming the homes of Supreme Court justices. They started rioting in DC, because of the potential, because we hadn't had a ruling yet, the potential of Roe v. Wade being turned over.
Well, notice every political homicide that has happened that I can think of right off the top of my head have never been right-wing organizations or right-wing people. They've all been left-leaning people, and left-leaning are people that subscribe to the left ideology.
They just tried to kill a judge, for crying out loud.
Exactly. So essentially what they're saying is that because of several divisive issues that were coming out, that white supremacist groups and white national groups are going to be at the highest risk for volatile behavior and violent actions that are going to be going on throughout the summer of 2020. And these divisive issues they were concerned because they were from skewed information around these things that would cause you people to lash out. And these divisive issues were the midterm election season, the election year information or disinformation, the SCOTUS ruling on Roe, guns, immigration, and alphabet groups and issues.
See, you see the narrative. You see why we were calling this the show, and then why we add the conspiracy to it.
We don't want them reading our thoughts.
Everything that now CNN, AJC, all these real left-leaning media outlets,
Rome News Tribune,
are whoa. He didn't mean Rome News Tribune. He means hometown headlines.
Right, that's what I mean.
All of this comes back to what I call Democratic conspiracy theories, because they're pushing the same narrative that goes back to the same thing. They're trying to link it all back to Donald Trump and why he shouldn't be president in 2024, because they know he's going to be president in 2024.
Exactly. I mean, all of this is, quite frankly, the biggest misinformation or the biggest disinformation, misinformation campaign out there. They're trying to say that because of the ruling that could potentially be coming out of the Senate on the 2A groups, that it's going to really upset a lot of the right-leaning American people, and they're going to come out and kill folks for it. They're trying to say that the immigration issues, they're going to kill folks over it. They're trying to say that because of the alphabet group rights and everything, they're going to try and kill folks over it. They're trying to say because of midterm election results, they're trying to kill folks for it. They are not saying is that all of these things on all of these issues is the left-leaning organizations are the ones that are actually creating the violent episodes and the violent attacks in regards to all of this. It's the left-leaning groups, not the right-leaning groups.
And so I want to go back to, something that we didn't mention about the hearing. They showed video evidence of video of, you could clearly see that this woman was knocked down. She hit stairs, concrete stairs, got knocked unconscious. That is awful, right? If this was a true riot, it'd have been like a mosh pit, and they would have stomped this person out.
No, yeah.
All right, like they did to the guards at the Portland Capitol when the left and Antifa ran over and took over Portland for months
and burned the courthouse to the ground.
They took all the guards, the police, they stomped them out. And when I say stomped out, I mean like they basically went 5 people on one and beat the heck out of them.
So they're going to say the counter this is that, well, look what happened on January 6th. Okay, let's look at what happened on January 6th as compared to what happened in Summer of Love 2020. You had police officers that were murdered in the streets. You had police officers, you had innocent bystanders that were bloodied beyond recognition. And you can Google these images. You cannot Google a single image of an officer that was harmed on January 6th.
You know what? You just made another correlation too, because they want to come after guns, but they were beating people and stabbing people during Occupy, when you had the big Occupy movements, when you had, they brought guns to Portland, but when you had all these riots that were going on, they were beating people with bats. When, you know, because people talk, like, speaking of the Proud Boys,
everything,
like that's what created the Proud Boys, was because you had Antifa attacking random citizens and hitting people with bats and stabbing them in the middle of the street.
Exactly.
And that's where, like that's when they really came out of Florida, because it started popping up in Florida, it started popping up in California and New York City, and they were just going out and stabbing people. So again, we have a mental health and people problem, because it's not guns, but they are going to use this again to try to create gun control and then say it's a white supremacy problem.
Yeah.
I guess it's my problem too, because I didn't vote for Joe Biden, so I guess I'm not black anymore. You know, because that's what triggers me about this whole thing, is like, oh, it's a white supremacy problem. Oh, I didn't vote for Joe Biden, so I'm black. Like,
oh man,
that's all they do.
Well, you know, hey, all we can do is come back at the end of the day, kind of like our mentor says, it's going to be chiseled on my tombstone. I told you, bastard. So.
Told you, bastard. So.
But as always, we always like to close out each show by saying, if you see any of our content anywhere, please like and share everything. Doing that really increases our numbers, gets it up higher in the news feed to where more people are going to be able to see it, and it's really going to start spreading our message out a lot further. Always subscribe to everything that you see out there as far as all the platforms that we're on. We're literally on just about every single social platform out there, and we're ramping up a lot of the our efforts on a lot of the other platforms that we don't really have as big a presence on. And please go to the website. We have it right there on the screen. It's conservativestalk.org, and hit the sponsor tab in the top right hand corner or the bottom left hand corner, and help us out with what you're able to, because every bit of that goes right back into this, to where we're really able to help with the production, or to really increase production, be able to give a better show, to be able to increase our presence, and be able to spread it out on a lot of these platforms, so we're able to get a lot more people to watching and seeing this.
I mean, everything that you see is everything you see in this studio was pretty much either something we already had, or is because of our sponsors. And, you know, we're very thankful for that.
So as always, you want to close us out with your favorite bit?
Always. 150 days until we beat Stacey Abrams.
Oh,
for the final time. It's the final countdown.
After a show like this, with all the negativity out there, I love closing out on something like that.
I do too.
Just gives you hope for the future.
Well, you know, because the reality is if you're a Republican, we're all fighting for the same thing. We're all fighting for the same thing, to end the madness.
So are those going to be your final words for the show? Last time it was chop on. Any other words of wisdom?
Go Brian Kemp.
How original. But thank you, and we will see y'all next week.